What's up, everybody? I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Welcome back to the channel for another episode of the Ask Me Anything series. I think it's been like 2 or 3 weeks since the last episode, so there's a lot of new things to talk about. You guys asked a lot of great questions this week. And just as a heads up, there's a very high chance I will be live streaming tonight watching the Anaheim Ducks versus Red Wings game, so another installment of Zegras versus Raymond, Sider versus Drysdale. It should be a lot of fun, so if you guys aren't doing anything, feel free to come hang out. I'd love to have you there. So with that all being said, let's go ahead and get started. The first question comes from Xavier Morgan Gillard, who says the playoffs in the East look pretty set in terms of who will and won't make it. If you had to pick one team to fall out and one team to replace them, who would it be? Keep up the great work. I really appreciate the support. This is honestly a really tough question because I can't really see any team that's currently in a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference fall out, just because I don't know which team would heat up that's on the outside looking in and actually pass them. But if I had to choose a team to fall out, I guess I'll just go with the Bruins. I mean, they're the closest team to falling out right now. They're in the second wildcard spot with 53 points. The goaltending situation looks a little bit weird and cloudy right now. Obviously, Rask hasn't really performed the greatest since coming back. And if I had to pick one team to replace them, I'll go with the Islanders just because they're such a proven team. Obviously, have made it to the conference finals the past 2 postseasons. They've still only played 37 games, so they're not even at the halfway point of their season right now. Maybe they could get hot and make things interesting, but in reality, I don't really see anything changing except seeding. I think all the teams in playoff spots right now in the East are going to make it. Moving along now to the next question. This one comes from Facts Sakes, who says, I believe with guys like Makar, Zegras, Fox, Hughes, Kaprizov, that the NHL is entering a new exciting era where creativity will be king. Agree or disagree? I 1000% agree. That's definitely where the game is heading, like it or not. I know there's a lot of old school hockey fans that, hate stuff like the Michigan happening, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on because there's a different question regarding the Michigan specifically. The thing that some guys, especially guys that you named in this question, are able to do in game and actually pull off and have it work really well are just insane. This next question comes from Plagueis, who says, coming from a Wild fan, I genuinely feel like we can go on a run this year. I feel like we should go after a guy like Kessel, Hurdle, Pavelski, etc. What are your thoughts as to whom the Wild should trade for? First off, I will say I agree with you. I feel like this is a year the Wild can definitely go on a run, and I think they should embrace that and maybe not go all in, like don't mortgage the entire future, but definitely try to swing for the fences a little bit. Try to get 1 or 2 big name rentals because there's going to be a lot of dead cap space over the next couple of seasons, and acquiring players at the deadline to go on playoff runs isn't going to be as easy in the next couple of years as it's going to be for them this year. I think one of the guys you mentioned in Joe Pavelski would be an amazing fit as a rental for the Minnesota Wild, and who knows, maybe you could look to re-sign him after the season depending on what Pavelski wants to do moving forward. Hurdle as well I think would be an amazing fit, but another guy I think would be really interesting, and this wouldn't even be a rental because they'd get him next season as well, as JT Miller. He's obviously been in trade talks a lot over the past couple of weeks, and depending on what the Vancouver Canucks decide to do, if they actually have JT Miller available for trade around the deadline, I think the Minnesota Wild are a team that should be all over that. Moving along now to the next question. This one comes from Thomas Wilson, who says, if there was a fantasy draft of every current and future player, where does Connor Bedard go overall? This is a really interesting question, and I feel like a really difficult one to answer as well. Obviously, Connor Bedard has the potential to be a generational talent, but we still haven't seen him play a single NHL game, right? I feel like it'd be really difficult to justify drafting players that aren't yet in the NHL over some other proven NHLers who are still relatively young, because I feel like fantasy drafts, you want to kind of focus on building towards the future, get like a younger player to start off with. I guess that's what I kind of do in NHL GM modes. I guess to answer the question, I'll say maybe late first round, early second round. Am I crazy in saying that? I'm really interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this. If there was a fantasy draft and you could draft players that aren't yet drafted into the NHL, where do you think Connor Bedard would go? This next question comes from Philly, who says, although not being talked about much being the current points leader in the league, do you see Jonathan Huberdeau be a top candidate or win the Hart Trophy this year, even over players like McDavid? And also, I really appreciate the support. I feel like 100% Jonathan Huberdeau should be getting some serious consideration for the Hart Trophy. I actually mentioned this in, I think it was the video where I was grading every team at the halfway point. When I was talking about Florida, I mentioned Jonathan Huberdeau being a Hart candidate, and there was a lot of comments on that video saying, how is he going to be a Hart candidate when he's not even the best player on his team? Obviously insinuating that Barkov is the best player on the team and he would kind of take votes away from Huberdeau. But think about McDavid and Draisaitl Seattle and Edmonton. We've seen Leon Draisaitl win the Hart Trophy with Connor McDavid on his team, and obviously we all know that Connor McDavid is a better player than Leon Draisaitl, so I really don't think that's all that valid of an argument. Jonathan Huberdeau is leading the league in points right now, like you said, and his team, the Florida Panthers, are also tied for the most points in the National Hockey League right now with the Colorado Avalanche. I feel like it would be a crime for him at least not to get even consideration for the Hart Trophy. Continuing on now, this next question comes from Flyers fan 28, who says, do you think that the way that Elias Pettersson has been playing this year is a piece of the Canucks' future, or is he a player that they would trade to a team that needs a first-line center and doesn't really have anyone for the future like Ottawa or Calgary or Columbus? To be honest with you, even though the past, couple seasons for Pettersson have been pretty disappointing, that is a player that if I were the GM of the Vancouver Canucks, Elias Pettersson is untouchable. That's a guy that I feel like is going to be a Vancouver Canuck for a very, very long time. And if they ever were going to trade him, which again, I don't think they're going to, and I don't think they should, you're obviously not going to trade him in the middle of this season or even in the off season after having, a bit of a mediocre season. You're going to want to trade him when his value is at his peak, which it definitely isn't right now. So those are kind of my quick thoughts on that. I'm still a really big fan of Elias Pettersson, and I feel like he obviously still has the potential to be year in, year out like a top 10 centerman. Next up, this question comes from Messier11, who says, what will Capo Caco's next contract look like? And also, I appreciate the support. This is a pretty interesting question. So Capo Caco is set to become a restricted free agent at the end of the season, and I feel like the most likely scenario we see happen here is just like a 2-3 year bridge deal. Even though Capo Caco has looked pretty solid this season, and as the season is going along, he looks more and more comfortable, you still really don't know what you have in Capo Caco. There's still a lot of untapped potential there. I could also see a scenario aside from a bridge deal where maybe the Rangers want to lock him up long term to a 5 or 6 year deal before Caco really breaks out, and then they could get him on like a steal of a contract. So maybe that's something they look to do, but I feel like the most likely scenario is a bridge deal. So if I had to make an exact prediction, I'll say they give him a 2-year bridge deal with an annual cap hit of $2.5 million. So total 2 years, $5 million. Moving along now, this next question comes from Sports Bro. It's the thing I was referring to earlier in the video when saying there's another question regarding the Michigan goal specifically. The question is, what are your thoughts on the abundance of the Lacrosse goal? And also, I appreciate the kind words. So I know it's a bit of a polarizing subject, more so between younger fans and older fans, but in reality, it's an effective move if you learn it. That adds a whole other element for goaltenders that they need to look out for when there's a player behind the net. Same as defensemen, they have to be aware of this. And we've even seen over the past week or so, players actually pull off the fake Michigan in overtime in the Dallas Stars and Florida Panthers game. Jonathan Huberdeau was behind the net. He faked the Michigan, which made the defenseman bite a little bit, and then he passed it out front to Sam Bennett, who scored the OT winner. So whether you like it or not, like I said, it's a really effective move. I think it's something that current NHLers are probably going to try to learn and try to, add that into their repertoire. And I feel like the Michigan goal is something we're probably going to see happen at least, multiple times this season over the next couple of years. Moving on now to the next question. This one comes from Nebula123, who says, if the NHL ended today, who do you think would own the Vezina Trophy? Personally, I feel like Shesterkin or Vasi should win it, and again, I appreciate the kind words. If the season ended today, I feel like the Vezina Trophy is a no-brainer. You have to give it to Igor Shesterkin. The numbers he is putting up are just insane, and the way he's affecting the New York Rangers season, you could honestly make the case that he should be the Hart Trophy favorite at this point. He's 21-5-2, has a .937 save percentage. I'm not quite sure what his goals saved above expected is at right now, but I know he's been the league leader for a while now in that category. He's just been on another level, and although there's been a lot of goaltenders having fantastic Vezina caliber seasons, I feel like right now it has to be Igor Shesterkin's award. Next up, we have a question from AEO234, who says, is Dylan Larkin finally showing he can be a top-line contributor and a guy who can carry a franchise? 6-game goal streak and 22 goals on the year. His career high is 32, and he's on pace to smash that. Dylan Larkin is on a whole other level this season, and it's been really nice to see. I've been someone who's said over the past couple of years that I don't think Dylan Larkin is good enough to be the #1 center on a championship team, and with the way Larkin has played this season, now that he has an elite playmaker on his line like Lucas Raymond, I don't really feel that way anymore. You still, I think, need a really, really good #2 center behind him. So yeah, I really do feel like with the way he's played this year, Dylan Larkin has showed that he can be that guy for a team, the player that leads a franchise, and it's been really awesome to see. Next up, this question comes from Leglendi. I hope I said your name properly. Do you think Ville Husso could be the new starter for the St. Louis Blues, and if he would play in the playoffs for the Blues? Also, I really like your content. Thank you for the kind words. It's pretty funny, but the situation in St. Louis right now with Husso and Binnington is very similar to when Jordan Binnington was an up-and-coming goalie and actually stole the starting job from Jake Allen. run and then took over as the starter in the playoffs as well. I feel like if this continues into the postseason, you have to ride with Ville Husso. When you're a team trying to win a Stanley Cup, you need fantastic goaltending, and I feel like the most logical thing to do is ride the hot hand. Now obviously we still have a whole other half of the season coming up and things can change, but as of now, Ville Husso has been much better than Jordan Binnington, and it really hasn't even been that close. Next up, we have a long one here from Sabertooth Shark, who says, do you think that the Sharks should go for the playoffs or sell this year? They are semi in the hunt for a wildcard spot, but they also don't look like a real playoff caliber team. The Sharks seem stuck in an in-between stage, and it doesn't look like they even know what they are going to do. Of course, I have my personal opinion on the matter, but I wanted to hear yours. And again, I really appreciate your support. If I were the GM of the Sharks, then I think the most logical thing for them to do is to sell off some of their more valuable pieces as rentals at the deadline, because even though, like you said, they are semi in the hunt for a wildcard spot, even if this team gets in, I don't really think they're a threat at all to go on any kind of run. Thomas Hertl is obviously the big question mark, but I feel like if they can't re-sign him before the deadline, which is very unlikely they will, I think you have to trade that player. There's a good chance he could have 30 goals before the trade deadline even happens. His value is at an all-time high right now. He plays the center position. He has good defensive impacts as well. This is a player that a lot of teams will give up a lot for. I feel like you have to convert on that, especially when there's a chance that if you don't, you could lose him for nothing in the offseason. So I definitely think they should look to move Thomas Hertl and some other guys, maybe, you know, Nick Bonino, depth players like that aside from Thomas Hertl, but I'm honestly not all that confident that that is what the San Jose Sharks are going to do, because, you know, we heard, I think it was in the offseason, Erik Karlsson was pretty vocal about him not wanting the Sharks to go into a rebuild. They're definitely in a weird spot, like you said. They're kind of stuck in that in-between stage, and I'm very interested to see what happens, but I really think they should try to convert and sell off some of their assets at the deadline. That would definitely set them up best for the future. Next up, we have a question from Bradley, who says, if the Red Wings trade Nemesnikov for picks, do you think they will bring him back next year? I love the sweater grab after every goal he scores. It seems like he loves being a Red Wing, and thank you for the support. You're 100% right on the part of him loving being a Red Wing. He actually grew up a Red Wings fan. He was always around the rink because I believe his uncle played for the Red Wings. I can't remember exactly who it was, but Nemesnikov was always at the rink. He was growing up in Detroit, so he does definitely love being a Red Wing, and I also love the sweater grab after every goal he scores. I'm honestly at the point when it comes to Nemesnikov where I wouldn't want the Red Wings to trade him unless you at least get a second round pick. Like, if you're going to get a third and a fourth for him, I don't even think it's worth doing. Detroit has so many draft picks, so many prospects. I would just love to see Detroit extend him, and obviously, like you said, best case scenario would be Detroit to trade him for maybe like a second round pick and then re-sign him in the offseason. That would be amazing. This next question comes from Ben Onar, who says, have you followed Canada's journey to make the World Cup? I actually have. I watched a little bit of their game yesterday against the United States. That was electric. My favorite part about the whole thing has been watching Alphonso Davies live streams where he's like watching the game and reacting to it. Some of his reactions to Canada's goals are hilarious. I wish he was playing, obviously, being Canada's best player, but him streaming his reactions for me is definitely the next best thing. And now for the final question of the video, this one comes from Chris Boots, who says, do you think the Blackhawks should have a major fire sale at the deadline? Examples like Kane, DeBrincat, Doc, etc. The Hawks are another team that's in a little bit of a weird spot like the San Jose Sharks. There was a report that came out the other week, I think it might have been from Frank Saravalli, where he said the Hawks deem the only untouchable players on their roster as Taves, Kane, and Seth Jones. I found that hilarious. If I was the GM of the Hawks, there'd be two untouchables, and they would be DeBrincat and Doc. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I do think they should have a fire sale and tear it down a little bit, but the only players I wouldn't trade are Doc and DeBrincat, and I don't know if you can trade a guy like Jonathan Taves or what you'd get in return. Obviously, he makes so much money. You can't trade Seth Jones. I'm sure you could probably find a suitor for Patrick Kane, but you'd likely have to retain some salary. So again, they're just in a really weird spot. So that is going to wrap up this week's episode of the Ask Me Anything series. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and huge thank you to every single one of you who took the time to come up with a question and leave it on the post. I wish I could feature them all. There was a lot of great questions this week that didn't even get featured in the video. If you guys are enjoying the Ask Me Anything series and you want to see another episode next Monday, then be sure to leave this video a like. That is the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.